I probably don't actually need a microphone, but farm kid, you know. So I'm Dr. Jane Shu. I'm a professor of microbiology. I do immunology at NDSU. My research area is asthma. Grew up in a little town, actually outside a little town of North Dakota, Sheldon, North Dakota, 120 people if everybody was home. Grew up as the ninth of 10 kids. Went to the big city of Fargo for school and did both my undergrad and my PhD at NDSU, and then was out at the University of Michigan Medical School for 4 years for postdoc before coming back to NDSU in 2004 as a faculty member. So I've been there for a number of years now. I am a full professor, just cleared that hurdle a couple years ago. And my other titles, along with doing teaching and research in my department, I'm a part-time administrator in the College of Agriculture and in the Ag Experiment Station, which is the research arm for Ag in North Dakota. I was the interim dean for the College of Business for 2 years, and academic programs leader, both at the undergraduate level for 3 years, and then now do a graduate program in cell and molecular biology, which is an interdisciplinary program. That's me.
How long was that?
Under 2 minutes.
Okay. My name is Kalen Verbeer. I'm not a doctor, and I want to be clear on that. No, I don't. I'm actually Chief Operating Officer at Family Healthcare. So we're a primary care medical and dental clinic. We have several clinics, but in the Fargo-Moorhead area, and primarily we serve what we call the underserved, those that have are uninsured or less high deductible insurance or catastrophic insurance, things like that. Also, we are the medical home and the dental home for the new Americans and the refugee population. So I've been exposed to some really, really diverse patient bases. It's been exciting. I think you'll find out, at least from the three of us up here, that we are from small towns in North Dakota, and we're veterans, but without being too over the top, I think being from a small town does not preclude you from actually being successful and being able to lead and to be a big part of organizations and growth and that sort of thing. My career actually started out as a computer science major. I found out after I got into the actual business world that I was really a pretty poor programmer, so I moved into the interaction with the end users, if you will, the people, the customers that actually used our products. From that point, I actually moved into 27 years with Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Dakota, and that was grueling from an insurance standpoint. I had the good fortune of joining a medical operation for about 4 years ago, dealing with doctors, providers, mid-level providers, nurses, care teams, and so forth. And so that transition has been exceptional. At one point in my career, I oversaw the responsibility for 1,000 employees. Not that that's a big deal, but trying to get to know your staff, get to know your people, is a critical part of leadership. You learn a lot of things through that process, but looking forward to having an opportunity to chat with you in smaller groups. Thank you.
I'm Polly Thorsness, and I'm the third person from the small town. Went to school in Gackle, North Dakota. My favorite class in high school was what we called bookkeeping back then. I loved the debits and credits. And then, so after that, I got a 2-year accounting degree at Valley City State University. It was Valley City State College back then. And after that, I got married and spent pretty much my whole career, other than a few other jobs, in banking operations where we use debits and credits a lot. But while I was at Community First for almost 20 years, I went to Moorhead State and finished my business administration degree. And then I also went to a graduate school of banking in Dallas, Texas. But I was with Community First and Bank of the West for 20 years, and now I've been with Bell Bank for 10 years this year, all in managing an operations department.
My name is Troy Kinser, and you can tell that if there was 3 from small town North Dakota, I'm the one that's not from small town North Dakota, and you can tell by the accent, I didn't grow up in North Dakota either. I graduated in civil engineering from Virginia Tech in Blacksburg, Virginia, and I currently serve as the Chief Operating Officer for Moore Engineering. So I graduated with civil engineering. My first job was with a 40-person engineering firm as a construction engineer, doing inspection for water line and sewer line projects. Moved in to be a design engineer, then project manager, then office manager, then regional manager, and went from a firm of 40-person to a 600-person. We were bought by a larger entity that became a 50,000-person organization, and then moved up to Moore Engineering, so back to almost my roots. Moved up here in 2014, and leading Moore Engineering's operations from engineering as they continue to grow and expand. So 40-person, 600-person, 50,000-person, back down to a 150-person firm, so I feel at home now.
So he's from a big town and works in small towns. Right. So the first question, and I'm going to start with Kaylin, is what decisions do you regret making early in your career? They got these in advance, so this isn't springing it on them.
Well, first of all, since I'm perfect, I really have no regrets. No, truthfully, I don't really look back at it. I think fundamentally, I've had the good fortune of a solid upbringing. Ethics was not a question. I think more so the temptations of life create challenges with ethics, and that's really the essence of it. I think what I actually learned, and these really weren't regrets or anything, but I learned some values along the way, what's most important. And some of those key things are, and I think you guys are all at an age where you're looking forward to what's next. And so some of the lessons that maybe we can share with you would be prepared for this. One is, don't hesitate looking for an opportunity that maybe appear to be ground level, front line, whatever it may be. Take advantage of the opportunity to actually get your foot in the door. It's not a regret, as I said, because truthfully, I don't have any. But I did learn a lot of things along the way. I also learned that I might need to look at something that I don't initially think or wouldn't have looked at when I got out of school. I came out of, as I said, with a computer science degree. I went and taught night school at Devil's Lake, at the time, Lake Region Community College. And it was a great opportunity. These were adult education. The reality was that every month that went by, I was losing money, so I really couldn't even afford to be doing that. So I had to look for something else. One of the big changes I made was that I'm a North Dakota kid, I'm a farm kid. I wasn't really looking to go to Dallas, and I wasn't looking to go to Denver, but there was a harsh reality at that point. Said, I need a job, I want a job. Why not look a little further? I can always come back, which I did. But at the same time, it was a lesson that I learned. I said, you come out with an idealistic perspective of the world, and the world's a little bit different when you get out there. But that doesn't mean to say that in 10, 15, 20 years, you're not where your dream was. But that's kind of some of those lessons that are important to think about as you guys venture out into the world next, But from an ethical standpoint, I did have the good fortune. I didn't really have. I had a solid foundation, and my dad was a disciplinarian, so but no, it wasn't like that at all. But I had a lot of good examples, and it was a little bit easier. As I said, the temptations of life as you go through it, probably what take you off course from an ethical standpoint.
Okay, so you opened a door, and I'm going to go through. Temptations of life, what were one of those? Because you kind of didn't answer the question, so I'm going to force it a little bit.
That's a technique I have, is to not answer the question. Some of the things of life, I guess, that get in your way. I'll call it, if you're fortunate enough to advance in your career, sometimes your ego gets you in trouble. And I won't say it's me, but I will say the people that I worked with have gotten to a point because of their job, their career, their position of authority to say, I deserve this, or everybody else does it, there's nothing wrong with it. So your perspective gets skewed once you get in that position, and I would say that that's probably the danger is as you move into these positions of authority, that you start seeing the world in a twisted way. And that's where you got to go back to your principles. I would say principles don't change, values can change, but principles don't. That's where you catch yourself and you say, that's not the direction you want to go. But that is the temptation of life, you know, and people will look at you and they'll, hey, you've got the higher job, he's whatever, this and that. And then you start taking it for granted that this is okay. And it's not, because it's a slippery slope.
Thank you. Polly?
Mine wasn't as much early in my career as it was before I ever started college, and the learning lesson there is, you know, don't let another human being smash your dreams. You may not get to your dreams right away, but work toward them. So when I was in high school considering college, I wanted to get into the vet tech program at NDSU because I love animals. And I had to intern with a veterinarian. So I went to the small town of Culm, North Dakota, and I went and talked to the vet, and he was a big old crotchety guy, probably 65 years old, and I was a lot shyer than I am today. But I talked to him about it, and he said, oh, women don't belong doing this. You don't belong working with cows and horses. You need to go find a dog and cat vet. And it killed me. I mean, it really sent me down a whole different path because I didn't have a lot of self-esteem anyway. But anyway, so after that, we worked our cattle, and my dad, I was always pushing the calves into the chute, and my dad and the vet would be doing their thing. And he actually didn't tell me this because I went to college into accounting, which I'm not sorry about. But he told my dad that he made a big mistake that day. So what I'm telling you is don't let another human being's opinion stop you from pursuing what you really want to do.
Thank you, Polly. Troy?
From a regrets perspective, and that's with the topic being ethics, it causes when you get questions, and got them ahead of time, is to be able to think about things, decisions that you make in a business perspective that you looked back on and said, was that questionable? And had to do some pretty hard searching to think about decisions that I made that were ethically challenging. And it's, when we say ethics, I don't think that there is, when you say make the right decision, or it's your values or your principles, they can get skewed. And then depending on who you talk to, it's a different perspective of what they bring to the table about what's right. So I did have to do some searching, and I tried to think about any ethical decisions that I made that would have been wrong. And I think early in my career, it would have been making listening to someone that was older, that was supposed to be a mentor to me, that caused me to make changes in what I had considered to be a right decision that was professionally, and because it was not what was the right decision from my training and my perspective, but was a decision that was being asked to be made that would have been a decision that would have made more money for the company. And so that was an ethical decision that if I had to look back and would I make that same decision today, I would not. Because as you get more experience and you get more life experiences, it causes you to want to stand your ground more. So again, I had to search backwards in that. From just a professional perspective, mistakes that were along the way is not asking enough questions and not trying to use different mentors that were people in my circle that I could have learned from, and being more focused on a single individual as opposed to trying to be very broad in my experiences and my exposure. Especially as you're young and you're starting your career, I would encourage you to try to get as much diversity as you can. I think you learn just as much from a great mentor about how to do things correctly as you do from someone who is maybe not a great mentor, learning how not to do things, because we learn from all the people that are around us. And I think that it's, if I had to do something over again earlier in my career, I would have been more questioning, I would have been more challenging, and I would have been wanting to reach out and get a more diverse and broad set of experiences.
All right. So something that I regret early on, and I don't know if looking backward, this is something that I would regret now. Certainly at the time, I thought, "Geez, what was I doing?" But it certainly has flavored the rest of my life in many ways. When I graduated from high school, I was the valedictorian of my 10-person class. So I was the top 10, all of the top 10% of my class in Sheldon High School. I never took a book home to study, had no study skills whatsoever upon entering college, which, as it turns out, not the greatest deal to come to college with no study skills, especially because there was twice as many, almost 3 times as many people in my math class as there was in my hometown. So going to NDSU, I did not have a plan. I was a smart kid. I liked biology. I was going to go to medical school. That's what I figured. But I didn't have a plan, and that would be a regret looking back. Is that, and this is what I tell students that I advise now. You know what? Have a plan A. Have a plan B, because plan A might not turn out for lots of different reasons. You might go to into a class that you think, oh, well, I'm a biology kid, I'm going to love this, or I'm a business kid, I'm going to love banking. You might hate it. You might take a microbiology class and love it, or you might take a cooking class and be a chef. Whatever it is, keep a little bit of a wiggle room to explore a little bit. Have a plan B in case plan A doesn't pan out. Make sure it's something that you can actually feed yourself, but that it's meaningful work. It's an important thing. And the other thing that I would say, and this goes right along hand in hand for me with having that plan, is having a network. God, I always hated it when people said, "Oh, well, you have to learn how to network." I don't know how to network. I don't even know what a network is. I mean, and to get thrown into a room full of people that you don't know and be expected to I don't know, speed date or something through the room and get their phone numbers and their contact information, it just seems gross to me. But I think that Troy had a really good point, is that diversity of, you don't need one mentor, you need 100. You need 20 for all the different types of things that you do. There's people that are going to be great mentors in what do you do at the next stage in your career. There's other people that are going to be great as mentors to help you learn how to study. God, this Ruben guy got me through chemistry, and I love him to this day. He's a doctor someplace. But really, having that diversity of mentorship in your life and collecting them, keeping them, staying in touch with the people that really can help you in your life as you go through. Because while I am very, very happy that I fell into the right spot, I'm pretty sure somebody was looking out for me, because I always thought that I was going to be a doctor, and I really am better at this kind of doctor. So that's me.
Great, thank you. So Polly, how about if you talk about a decision that you made that maybe wasn't ethical, and what may have been the consequences of that? Remember, you did get this in advance. You don't like it, I know.
I'm trying to
but-
figure out which one to say.
Just pick one.
So, when I was at Community First and I was in a vice president role, I was still fairly young. I had been divorced, kind of wild, because I wasn't wild before I got married. I actually dated a guy in our IT department. And while I knew it was something I should stay away from, just because part of it was my position, and then part of it was you work together, it didn't feel right, but I did anyway. Well, then it ended up being that, so we all had purchasing credit cards where we would buy things, we'd use them to travel. Well, he bought furniture on his, which is, a little bit short of being fraud, stealing from the bank. And so here's me involved in that, but I didn't know about it, but management didn't know that. So ended up defending myself, trying to get them to believe I had no clue that he had done this. And so then I ended the relationship. And in today's day and age, he could have, turned on me. He could have sued me for sexual harassment if he wasn't happy about that. Didn't, because it was, many number of years ago before a lot of that stuff started happening. But I look back on that, and even at that time, it just didn't feel right, and so I just shouldn't have done it. And, if you ever have that feeling that it's just not right, stay away from it.
Troy?
What was that question again?
Yeah, you're gonna let, you hate this question too. Have you made a decision that wasn't ethical, and what may have been the consequences of that? Okay, borderline. Borderline. How about a question, a decision you didn't like to make? You struggled to make, and you didn't like it.
I'll share, this was a personnel issue, and it was, going through some cost-cutting measures at the larger organization that I worked for before. What drove that organization as opposed to the smaller organizations, most of them were privately held corporations that I worked for. And so the bosses were the owners. When we got acquired by the larger 50,000 person firm, we answered to Wall Street, and we answered to our investors. And there's a different mentality when you answer to Wall Street and shareholders than it is when you have to answer to yourself, owner of the company back when we were acquired. But so changing the dynamic a little bit, it was all about the quarter was getting ready to end, and we were short on revenue projections, and therefore stock value was going to fall. So we started looking at the management team that sat in Los Angeles were directing the operations that we had in Virginia. And so they started saying we were going to slash. We were going to cut people, because the quickest way to cut expenses was to cut labor, because we're a service organization. So we're starting to have a look at laying off people. So probably the lowest paid person that we had, and she was our receptionist. She did an outstanding job being the receptionist, and she was very warm in greeting, but it was, according to the people that were making the decisions, she was expendable, just for the bottom line. And so it was my job, since she was one of my direct reports, to take care of laying her off. And I rebelled. I thought it was the wrong thing to do. The company had lost its heart at the time. And so at the time I was regional manager, I believe it was. And so my chief operating officer came in, and one of my other regional directors, my HR person, and said, "You will do this." And I threw a few expletives out there and said, "I will not do this." And I said, "If you want to fire me for that, that's your prerogative, but I will not do it." Unfortunately, I could not protect this individual, couldn't protect her from her job, because our HR director had to go out and do it. But it was a decision that I could have towed the line and followed the corporate directive and lost my heart in the practice. And I think the company lost its heart at the time. And I understand about bottom line. I'm not operate a for-profit business, and so making money is not bad, but it's the way that you make money and the ability to have to make so much money that you sacrifice people who've done what they were supposed to do. So that was an ethical decision that I made that could have cost me my job, but it goes back to values and principles, and I didn't lose my job. Probably had I left over my own accord, had another 6 years there, and still ran the operation. But after that, my sole purpose was, one, to make sure that we made money and took care of what we needed to do for the corporation. but I got out of bed every day that my number one goal was to protect everybody that worked for me and to protect their families, because I couldn't protect this one individual that probably needed more protection than anybody else did in the whole organization. So it was a decision I made. It turned out okay, but I was willing to sacrifice my job and my career to protect her, and couldn't do it, unfortunately. So that was a, can't say that was, it was a dilemma. It was a dilemma, because I could have said, nope, people are expendable and people's families, it doesn't matter, but it does matter. It matters to me. And that's why I'm at the organization I am today, is because I needed to get back to an organization that shared the same personal values that I did. And it's about people. It's about taking care of the people that I have the privilege of working with every day.
Do you want to share what happened at your current firm this last year to someone in a similar role?
Where do you want to go? Where do you want me to go?
Deb.
Where?
Deb.
Oh. So we had share a personal story. This is a current employee that we have.
In contrast to?
In contrast, so our receptionist at the current place that I work went through having some medical challenges, and it required her to go get some treatments and be off from work for a long time. And she was so reluctant to go get her medical treatment because she's single, and she was fearful that she would lose her job. In contrast to the company that I came from, it was, you do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself and don't worry about your job. You will have it when you come back. The company rallied around her, and we have a PTO, vacation, paid time off, so it's vacation. We have a vacation or PTO donation policy. She got so much time donated from the people within the organization that she was able to take time off and still get her full paycheck for the entire time, just for people wanting to take care of her. And she's home recuperating, and another person, it speaks to the character of the organization that I have the privilege to be associated with today. Another one said, gosh, we were having a conversation, and one of her long-lost hobbies is piano, and she never could afford a piano. So her coworker took it upon herself to ask for donations from her other coworkers, and we took up enough money to buy her a piano so that she could recuperate, and with a long-lost love that she had to get back to playing music. So we're contrasting the two organizations, and I can't say the other was wrong, because I understand that you have to protect the shareholders, because if you all invest money, you don't look behind the curtain to know what happens within the organization. You just want a return on your investment. But my decisions were made based on my personal values and my principles, and to be able to work for an organization that aligns with your personal goals, it just makes it that much more enjoyable, getting up every day and doing what I've built a life doing, my career. So just the place that you choose to exercise your skills means a lot. So don't compromise. Don't compromise. It's important that you don't have to compromise your values and your principles when you go to work. Sounds idealistic, but it's really not, because there are people out there that will align with you. So just be cautious.
Jane? Hard question.
Man, I tell you what, so we did get these questions early. Clearly, I need to do more living. I don't have anything very good. So I'm digging deep. I'm digging back into the vaults. I don't think I've ever said this in public before. But
Now our ears are perked up now.
yeah. Yeah. So the one thing that I've never said this in public before, and I'm going to say in front of everybody in the world. So I'm a teacher. I hate cheating. Hate cheating. I think this comes back a long, long ways. I mean, so literally, first day of class, in any class that I have, I tell people my policy is that if you cheat in my class and you get caught cheating, you fail the class. Just full stop. I am a hard ass. But I think that comes from 7th grade. So 7th grade science class, which my dad taught, by the way, I had like a really, really high percentage because we had daily quizzes. Every day we had a 10-point quiz. So by the end of the end of the year, you had like 6 billion points. I did really well in science. But I remember one day I wasn't sure of an answer, and I knew exactly where it was on the sheet that was right under my desk. Right under my desk. And I had the answer already on the sheet, but I leaned over and I looked at it. I have to tell you, so I'm 49 years old. I was a 7th grader. That one thing has colored my life since then. I swear to God. You laugh, it's the truth. I am so embarrassed and ashamed of that thing. I don't cheat. That is something that it really is a bad thing for me. And the way I felt about that, even at the time, does flavor how I look at things and how I look to be honest with other people. I am a person that can have very difficult conversations with people. I have, in higher education, it is not easy to fire people, as you may know. I have had very difficult conversations with people that have ended their careers when it needed to be the case. But I always try to be very, very truthful and very honest with people because I know that I don't want to feel like that. I know that I don't want to be a cheater. So it's not a deep work story for sure, but it is something that I think really pretty early on, it's part of who I am, and it's important for me not to compromise that.
Kaylin.
Clearly, I would have failed all of her classes. I'm just kidding. I think what you're finding out in just listening to the four of us is that for us to identify those ethical challenges or those times where we had to compromise are difficult to find because hopefully we were grounded enough to not get caught in those situations, or for my examples, it was a result of somebody else's experience. And to me, I love watching other people go down in flames, and it's not me. I'll just give you some examples. In my world, there are vendors, we'll call them vendors, but they're people that support you with computer systems and software and services and so forth. And they will do anything to curry favor with you. So basically, they will come and they'll confront you, or they'll meet you at a conference or convention or whatever and say, if you're interested in our products or whatever, we can make it worth your while. And so some of the things that come out are like, if we purchase, we'll say software, for example, if you purchase this software, and these are real examples, are there any golfers in here? Okay, has anybody ever been to the US Open? Would you like to? Okay, we'll assume you do. Yeah. So, a vendor goes and said, hey, if you can convince your CEO or whatever to go with our software, that we can set this up and you can enjoy the whole US Open on us. I was like, well, that sounds pretty cool. First of all, that's a huge ethical compromise. But second of all, you kind of go, well, this seems about right. I mean, we're going to be buying multi-million-dollar software. At least they could do is give us a week or a weekend with the US Open, right? So you have that experience. Another experience was that, hey, I have this bottle of Dom Perignon. If you've ever had that, I wouldn't know what it tastes like, but it's expensive wine, I guess. So very expensive, and it was like, I'm going to give you a bottle of that just for listening to our pitch. Well, you're representing your organization. And so these types of things are really, as I said, the slippery slope. after a while you start thinking, everybody's after me, they love me. They want me to have all this stuff. And you go, we're worthy of that. I'm now in a position where I can make these decisions. Obviously, it's worth that much because I'm a big shot now, and my time and I should be compensated. So you get into this kind of this position where you compromise what you know is wrong, but you've convinced yourself it's okay. And unfortunately, I think one of the other questions comes down to what has changed to kind of bring an end to those types of things. Unfortunately, too many people taking advantage of that stuff has created, we have laws, we have policies, and it's always for those situations. Who remembers a company called Enron? Exactly.
They
Perfect
watched the
example.
movie.
And how many, oh, is that right? That's creepy, isn't it? It's creepy that you could actually allow your organization to go that far down a slope that you knew was wrong. Misrepresentation, everything. And yet everybody was so protective about that whole thing. And that's when I said earlier about the slippery slope. And unfortunately, when you get into an organization, I'll call it a little like the internet or Facebook or whatever, is there's an ability to be anonymous. And if you're in a large organization of 50,000 people, you can be anonymous. And you can hide behind, well, there are 59 or 50,000 other people here. This is just a one little compromise. And the reality is that you're compromising your own principles in this. And that's the organizational, or that's the ethical dilemma that you need to guard against. And you have to realize it at the time. I wouldn't have failed all of your classes. But I can understand because it just felt wrong at the time. And yet, the temptation was so great. So, again, I like to learn from other people's mistakes and hope that I never get there. I'm not putting myself in a place where that couldn't happen because I know there are times that there has been that kind of a temptation. But when you get out into the world, people will want what you have, and they'll be willing to put stuff in front of you that you have to think long and hard about.
So, before we do any more questions from our list, do you all have questions? And yes, Bryn is going to ask a question, but I want to put it out there. Anyone who asks a question gets 5 points from any of our classes.
Per question.
See, he's negotiating on your behalf over here. So,
And we're thinking if you get enough, you won't have to take the final.
Working for you.
okay, Bryn, you had a question.
Okay, well, I'm already really sorry. I forgot your name.
Troy? No. Polly? Kaylin? Kaylin.
I'm Kaylin. You as well.
All right, so, you said earlier that principles can't change, but values can. So what are your principles then? Have your values ever changed? And was there ever a time where you get centered back on your principles?
Those are fantastic questions. We're going to need a couple hours for that. So I'm going to pick the one or the two that I feel comfortable answering. Just kidding. Yeah, principles, and I firmly believe this, and principles are things that don't change. And this is my definition, and I think comes from a lot of people. If you're, at some point in your lives, you will learn about people like Peter Deming and Stephen Covey and True North and things like that. So some of these things I've just been indoctrinated on. But principles really are things that don't change, and I'm not going to get into specifically what they are, but I'll talk about values. So at some point, all of you will find a significant other. Your life will change. You will go down a path where your spouse or your significant other, whatever, their career becomes important. So what I valued at the time before that is different at the time that I got married or whatever it may be. So and I'll pick a couple other examples. The day I had my daughter, my values were on my daughter and taking care of my daughter. It wasn't on making sure that my relationship with my spouse was we still work on it. It's like, yeah, that was gone, but no. But that's what I mean by value. So to me, it was really important at that point that I had to change what was valuable to me. I was a baseball player, so what I valued most was Tuesday and Thursday game nights, and then softball, or our weekends were tournaments. So those were values to me until I got married, and then they weren't so valuable anymore. But that's the kind of thing. So as your life changes, your values are going to change as well. I think Troy was alluding to this too, where he had been part of this big organization. At some point in your life, you've got so much living behind you, where I look at life now totally differently. I had a career change after a full career, and the reason I did that is because I've been blessed. I need to give something back. So I was like, I'll call it taking for 30 years. And there's something that I can give back. And that's, I think, a value thing, is where I realized that there's more that I could have done all along, but at least they didn't find out after I'm dead, and that kind of thing. So what was the last part of that question?
It was there ever a time when you needed to get centered back on your feet?
No. And I'll tell you one thing, and this isn't for everybody, but I'm married really well. And that's true. You might have a best friend. It's not about a spouse. It's not about it. You might have a best friend, somebody who will keep you on track, where you will go talk to them on a moment of crisis or whatever, and you say, and they'll look at you and go, "Are you serious?" She is my best advisor. All my business decisions, I go home and I say, "What do you think?" And she goes, "You're crazy. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of." I go back to work and I say, "That's crazy. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of." But that's the kind of thing that is really important. If you found a person that is your anchor, or a group of people that can anchor you, take advantage of that, because they see much more clearly from the outside than you do from the inside.
So does anybody else want to tackle that question? Have your values or principles changed? And when have you needed to re-anchor yourself?
I just want to comment that choose wisely who you seek your advice from, because you're fortunate that you've got a person that is honest and reputable and shares the same principles and values that you do. If you seek advice from the wrong type, you can be led down that path just as easily as you can be brought back to center again. And I like Polly's answer earlier, is that if it feels wrong, it's probably wrong. It probably is. I mean, I'm making the assumption about upbringing and what you know right from wrong. I knew right from wrong. I didn't always listen to the. I did wrong because it was fun. It was adventurous. It was different, you know. But would you do it in front of your grandmother? Would you make anything that you did? Somebody asked me a question. Would you do it in front of your grandmother? And I'd go, no, I wouldn't do that in front of my grandmother. And I'd be embarrassed to tell her. Then it's probably wrong. Don't do it, you know. So, you know, just you're fortunate if you can align yourself with the right people. Somebody made the comment about maintaining your network and your connections, and don't let that go astray. I'll go back to the regrets. There's one thing that I look back and regret is that, and as I get older, I start to value it more, is you start trying to reconnect with those people that were important to you along the way. And and I didn't think about it as I was trying to progress in my career and trying to work hard and trying to do the right things and trying to just follow my own vision of my career path. And I kind of lost sight of it. But as I'm getting close to the end of it now, I look back, and some of the colleagues that I had early on in my career we're starting to reconnect right now. And it's pretty cool, because it's people that I valued coming up through. So a regret is that don't lose sight of the connections that you make along the way, and work hard to maintain them, because it's as you invest time in your career, it was easy for me to lose sight of those. And it's easy I look at life in a little bit of a balance, and as you focus on your career, things get out of balance that are important, and almost lost my family, almost lost my wife, because I invested too much time in my career, and I forgot about this other side of what was important to me. And fortunately, I have a good partner that said, you got to make a decision, because I'm not going to live like this. We just had our first child, and I was still working on advancing my career, and it was kind of a wake-up call, and you go, okay, get a little balance in life. And and we achieved balance. When we worked it out so that there are times that we invested in each other, and there's times that I invested in my career because it was important, and she's important, my family's important. So be careful along the way that you don't let things get out of balance, and you have to work hard to make sure they stay in balance. And it's work, but it's worth.
I would add to that a little bit too. 'Cause that resonates with me as well. One of the things I think is being a very strong personality and a female coming through academia and in science. I have really had a long history of having lots of male friends. I think probably most people, if they didn't look at me and just looked at my career trajectory, I would be male. My revelation, probably as of about 5 or 6 years ago, when I consider myself a grown-up, is that, dang it, you know what? I really like women. They're okay. I have a lot of good women friends now. Never had women friends before. And I think a lot of that was that we tend to be in competition, particularly when you're the only one in the room. And that is something that I regret, because it's not, I don't feel like I have to be the friend to the other girl because we share the sisterhood. But I do think that it's important to look around the table and see who you are, who other people are, and that can be lots of different faces. But see how you can help other people in their career path too. Now it's probably one of the things that I treasure most about my job is the fact that I do a lot of mentoring, both students and faculty, and that's a fantastic thing. I think had I started doing that a little bit earlier, my network would be even better, because it really is. It's very rewarding.
Another question from the group?
By the way, it was a 10-point question, not a 5. Okay? It was 3 questions, really, so it could be 15.
Maybe 15.
It could be 15. Hey,
We'll see.
right here.
Other people, questions? Isaac?
Oh, baby, you learn way more from the bad times. I thought it was funny. Somebody was talking about, I don't remember which of you, that you can learn as much from the bad examples as the good one. Oh, baby, I had some really bad examples. But it's kind of one of those things that I will never do it that way.
In contrast to that, I've been really fortunate that the people that I had worked for throughout my whole life, they were ones that were willing to sacrifice, and they would be there with you. So back in the day, as a systems person, I was on call, and when you were on call and you ended up going in, in middle of the night, multiple times you'd go in. You had a boss that actually was there with you. They would always be there with you, and I had that my whole career, would never ask you to do something that I wouldn't do from their standpoint. There's something I wanted to touch on too, and you guys, you'll be lifelong learners, I know this, but there's some people that write some excellent books that tell you about things, and you guys go to Concordia, so this stuff resonates with you. But servant leadership. Peter Block wrote a book called Stewardship, and it's about servant leadership, and really that's serving the people that work for you when you get into a position of responsibility. And I had so many good leaders that were servants. Their first job was to take care of me, although they were my bosses. And so to your question, I had a lot of really good examples that said, if you're going to lead people, you got to serve them. And so I did learn from some bad examples too, but to me, I had great fortune to have those kinds of people. That's a good question.
So, your question about valuing the things we're not happy about versus the things that we did well. One of the things, I've done a lot of stupid things in my career, personally and professionally, but now when I'm coaching people, I can understand when they do something stupid. I can understand how they feel. I can relate with them. I can share my stupid experience and how I got out of it, so then I can help them on their journey as well. And so I do value the dumb things that I've done because they've helped guide me to where I am today, and I can have empathy for those who are trying to go along the way that I did too. Not proud of some of them, but they, you know, they've helped shape me, so I do value them.
As you progress in your careers, and if you are fortunate enough or choose the career path and you can get there so that you are leader of an organization, I'd ask you to be humble. I make mistakes every day, and you have to admit that you make mistakes, and you're not beyond just because you have risen to a position, or you hold a position, or you have more experience in your career. It doesn't make you infallible. I had an example just 2 days ago that I acted out of character, and it bothers me when I act out of character because I hold myself to a high standard, and some things I can't allow myself to do, and I allowed myself to do it, and it bothered me so much so that I didn't sleep. So I had to go to that individual the next day, and I apologized because I was wrong, and I was out of character. The example, the point that I was making was not wrong. It was the approach that I used to make the point. And so make sure that you never think that when you get to a position of responsibility that you're not infallible, because you are. And be humble as you do that, and care about the people around you enough to say, I value you as a person. Kind of goes to this servant leadership piece. I value you as a person, and I made a mistake. I meet colleagues somewhere out in public, in a junkyard, sitting at the bar having a beer. Next thing you know, here comes somebody in beside me, and they introduce me to the people behind the bar and say, "This is my boss." And I go, "This is my coworker." Because I don't introduce myself as his boss, because even though we are, it's just a position. I have the privilege of being able to make a different set of decisions every day than this other individual does. But that doesn't mean that what I do is more important than what he or she does within what they do. We just do different things. So that individual has to excel at what their part of our success story is, just as I have to excel at what my part of our success story is. So value people all through the organization, because they have, the people around you will contribute as much, if not more, to your own success as you do. So surround yourselves with good people.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do next. I want you to get into 4 more or less circles, more or less similar numbers.
Who said that? Gosh.
And we'll have each of them sit in one of the circles, and then you can ask questions in a slightly smaller group. Ready?
In the middle of the circle,
Get
if you
set.
like.
Go. Okay, if I could have the panelists come to the front again and slide your chairs generally toward the front. We'll do a quick wrap up. Mr. Kinser, would you like to join us up front, please?
AJ's brother's been asking me to kill the
All the time. What was that?
Okay, my second to last question.
Pardon?
My second to last question. They're very good.
No, they're all very, very good.
Very good.
Okay, so now that we're all together again, I would like the panel to say one thing that you've learned in your career that you hope for these folks. One thing that you hope for them that you've learned in your career.
Always do meaningful work.
Read, 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 and learn everything you can. And continue learning.
These guys are so succinct. I can't do anything in brief. But actually, one thing in brief I can do is like, yeah, I'm working on it. I'm buying time. Can't you tell? No, appreciate people, and you're going to see this. You'll see people that mean a lot to you, but realize you will very seldom will you ever end up in an occupation where you work alone. So appreciate people. Don't lose track of that.
Don't shy away from, just because things are hard or because you think it's demeaning or you think it's menial, don't shy away from anything. Try to do as many diverse things as you can, especially if you're starting out, so that I think as times get tight, the more diverse experiences that you have, the more appreciation that you can have for others and the more value that you bring to an organization. Until you get further up in your career, then you can kind of hone in into one thing, but don't be afraid to experiment and explore and take on the hard tasks and volunteer. Ask for things to do. Don't sit back. Be the master of your own career, because you have the ability to do that by showing initiative. That was 6 things, I know.
So do you have a question that you would like to hear from these young people? They won't answer, but
How many know Michael Vick? That was a question in group 2. I just want you to know that. So Virginia Tech, Mike Vick connection. Okay, never mind.
so who knows the name of the Virginia Tech team? Hokies. Okay,
You're gonna be successful no matter what. So how many engineers out here? Because we hire Hokies. I'm just kidding.
I'd like to ask one question, and it's probably not one that any one specific answer can work. What were you hoping to hear or have one of us respond to tonight? I know it's like, why do we have to go do this and listen to a bunch of old people talk? I'm speaking for myself. But what were you expecting tonight? Because not that I'll ever get a chance to do this again, but if I did, I'd like to do it better.
Anybody? 5 points, Bryn. No, but I've got a hand up, so we'll go. Cool, thank you.
You mentioned regrets. I think you could ask all of us up here to say, and regrets are, I look at them as mistakes. You know, we make mistakes. I make mistakes every day. And so learn from your regrets, learn from your mistakes, and try not to make them again, because nobody's perfect. You will make mistakes, but learn from them and try not to make them again. And if that's a key lesson I've got for a takeaway, because I've made mistakes. We all make mistakes. Be humble, though. I said that to other group. Be humble in what you do, because just because you have a different position than somebody else doesn't mean that your opinions are infallible or you're better than somebody else. All opinions are valuable. Try to encourage that sitting around the table making decisions. All opinions are valuable.
One of the last questions that we had in our group was, have you ever had a time that you felt just completely overwhelmed? Just completely overwhelmed with all the stuff that you're doing, or all the classes you're taking or teaching or whatever. All the time. I am still trying to figure that out. That, I think, is probably one of the things that I do least well in my day-to-day life, and how that impacts other people and the things that I owe them. My kids, my husband, my students, my technician, people that I write letters of recommendation for, people that I do reviews for. This was just today, by the way, that all of those things are things that need to have time. And sometimes there's just not enough time. So trying to manage how you stay connected, but still sometimes say, nope, you know what? I couldn't possibly, because something else is going to suffer.
To add to that, push yourself outside your comfort zone, because you get used to that, and then you push yourself further outside your comfort zone, and it does overwhelm you. But that's where you really learn, is when you are doing something that you maybe have no clue about. And then I just wanted to say one more thing about what Troy said, is with mistakes, own your mistake. Don't be afraid to step up and say, it was mine and here's how we can fix it. I work with a lot of people who will deny it, and it takes so much longer to fix it, but own it, because that's integrity, that's being genuine, and then you learn from it. And it's very important when somebody owns their mistake and admits it.
And when you get to the top, you need to own others' mistakes, because you're the boss. It's very easy to sit at the top and go, well, Sally did it or Joe did it, I'm going to blame them. Nope, it happened under my watch, therefore I am responsible for it. You will earn so much respect from your coworkers and your direct reports and the rest of the organization when you own a mistake that happened under your watch. So don't try to push it off, and don't try to blame others, even though you weren't directly responsible. You'll earn
Galen, you
huge
have
respect.
the last word.
I just, 8:30, sorry.
Actually, it's 8:28.
Okay, I got 2 minutes. No, I agree with all of what's been said here, that we actually coined the phrase celebrate your failures in our organization. And that was a motto, and it wasn't just words, it really was. We expect people to make mistakes. And if you're a good leader, you will help people when they make mistakes and say, don't worry about it, we'll learn from it, we'll adapt, we'll pull the team together, whatever it may be. So celebrate your failures, and I love to celebrate. So we had a lot of failures, and our folks were accustomed to making mistakes, and we learned from them. So that you're going to run into that. Life's hard. It really is.
Great way to end. Life's hard.
Oh, there we go. Life is beautiful. I don't know about
And hard.
but beautiful. Stay humble. You aren't infallible. Get different kinds of mentors. Ask questions. If it feels wrong, it probably is. Thank you. And these are the ones I could fit within a tweet. So I have a whole stack of notes over there. I learned a lot. I don't know about you. Did you learn a lot?
So how are you going to let them know that you did?
Let's have pepperoni pizza. Let's do this thing.
So thank you. Thank you for taking time away from your kids and your donkeys. She has donkeys and mules. From the things you could be doing tonight and instead sharing the evening with us, we are just so blessed that you did that. Thank you so much. And thank you for coming. See you tomorrow in class. And if you came, you got your 5 points. You don't need to tell me whether you asked a question.